far as the curse, so the serpent first, and also if you could mention the promise in there, or the proto-evangelion.
Okay, so the serpent, again, curse is problematic. The idea that he's disenfranchised from the other animals. Again, he's classed among the beasts of the field, and here he's disenfranchised from them. In other words, he's removed from his community, which in ancient world is a huge thing. People, everything exists in community. And so now he's separated from his community. So that's the nature of that statement. He's made docile. The contrast to going on your belly is not standing on your feet. The contrast to going on your belly is being raised up to attack, as a serpent does. So that's talks about being docile and eating dust. Of course, serpents don't really eat dust, but their place, their location, is in the dust, and dust, of course, has already been associated with death. They're in the world of death. And so there are those kinds of statements being made. We don't have to suggest that somehow their legs atrophied and fell off. In terms of, that's 3:14. In terms of 3:15, I'm a little odd man out on this one, in that I'm not persuaded that it's a promise. The first thing that points me in that direction is that the two verbs of attack are the same Hebrew verb. So let's use something very vague like strike. So the serpent strikes at the heel of the human strikes at the head of the serpent. Both of those are potentially mortal blows. If a human being steps on the head of a serpent, it may kill him, may not. Okay. If a serpent bites the heel of a human, may kill him, may not. Okay. So what we have here is that these two now opponents, because there's enmity between them, these two antagonists are exchanging potentially mortal blows. But each direction, it's potentially mortal. In other words, I don't see that it tells you who wins. If both verbs are the same and both verbs are potentially mortal blows, it doesn't say who wins. If it doesn't say who wins, then there's no point in trying to make the seed of Eve to be a particular seed that's coming centuries and centuries from now, who will be a savior. That doesn't get you anywhere if this doesn't talk about a victory. And so I'm inclined to see this as reference to Eve's corporate seed, human beings. So her seed is reflected in that. And so that idea then is that the point of the verse would be, number one, this was not a one-off. That is, it's just not kind of an isolated happening that just you can forget it ever happened and things are going to be the same. It's not a one-off, but it's not a game ender. That is, the struggle is going to continue. It's not like everything's doomed now. There's going to continue to be this hostility and antagonism between the parties. So I don't see that it is indicating some future savior or future deliverance or future promise. And what I feel supported in that by the fact that the New Testament never comes back to it. You know, the New Testament authors go to a great length to try to connect all the dots, you know, for Messiah and for all of the things that Jesus is going to do. And if this truly were the very first announcement of all that Jesus was going to do, I guess I would expect them to make that connection.
Right.
And so if the Old Testament text is not connecting those dots and the New Testament text is not connecting those dots, then I myself feel reluctant to connect those dots.
Okay. So as far as the man and the woman then, if you don't call it a curse on them, what would you call it? And what's the nature of it?
Yeah. This is talking about the consequences, not the penalties. Okay? Not the punishment, but the results. The consequences of the choice you have made. You know, even in the basic things that were sustaining humanity, fruitful and multiply, right? Here's food that I'm providing for you. Even in those basic things, they're going to experience and confront non-order, things that disrupt the order that they're trying to bring. For a woman, it's childbirth. Now, what's interesting there, and many translations don't pick this up, although some do, that word in the first line, I will greatly increase your, let's call it pain for the moment, I'll get back to that, your pain in childbearing. Everybody knows that word is not childbearing. That word is pregnancy, conception. Okay, so pain and conception. Of course, there's the problem. Conception is not painful. So what do you do with this? And most translations have chosen to ignore the fact that this specifically refers to conception, and they've just translated childbearing. I go to the other option. That is that this is not referring to pain. This is referring to anxiety. Okay, now that I can bear that out with the study of the Hebrew word. Sometimes it refers to pain, but remember, of course, that pain also brings anxiety. Okay, so this is talking about the anxiety of pregnancy, of conception. Is that real in the ancient world? Oh, so real. Because if a woman couldn't conceive, she could be divorced, snap the fingers, and she would have nothing. There are no social networks. There's nothing to catch her. If she could not conceive, she had no life, and she was doomed to be a begging pauper. There's just nothing for her. And so there was a lot of anxiety about conception. Not only that, of course, but the whole process of pregnancy. The idea of, will I carry my child to term, or will there be a miscarriage? Will there be a stillborn? And we have to remember that there is a high level of mother mortality in childbirth. Well, I don't know the real numbers. I've heard numbers like 20%. So you get the great news, you're pregnant, right? Which means your life is going to be changed, but it also means in 9 months you might be dead. Is there anxiety connected to this? Oh, yes. So labor pains has very little to do in this picture. Do people have anxiety about labor pains? Sure, but it's not near as big as the anxiety about all of these other things, about the health and life of the child, about conception, about mother living through the process. And so the whole idea is that them choosing their own path of order means that they're going to have to confront this kind of on their own, through their own agencies and whatever they can do. How are they going to bring order for themselves in this very tenuous world of bearing children? The text then goes on to tell her, right, that even though there's this anxiety that surrounds the whole process, what is the solution for that in the world that they have chosen? The solution to that is found that in those tense moments of anxiety, not moments, 9 months, right, of anxiety that are going to totally dominate her, she's going to seek some solace, seek some support, seek someone who can give her some consolation and confidence. She's going to seek out her husband because he's the one that will do that. So her desire, not a desire to dominate, not a desire to control, not a desire contrary to her husband. I'm sorry, I have great problems with the translators that do that. It doesn't say that. Her desire will be for her husband. What kind of desire is it? A desire for order in the midst of all this anxiety. And so she will desire her husband, and he will do what he should do. He will give her support. He will give her that confidence. The word rule there, in Hebrew, that word is almost never negative. It's always considered to be benevolent. And therefore, for the husband to take that role, the role that society gave him, for him to play that role is important as a response to his wife. God rules over his people. That is not an abusive, despotic, tyrannical rule. It is a benevolent rule that is for their good. And that's typically how that Hebrew word is used. This is a benevolent word for her good. That doesn't mean that every society has to be patriarchal, but Israel's was. And in a patriarchal society, that's the role the husband played. It's not telling you the Bible mandate is for there to be a patriarchal society. It's dealing in the culture in which it works. So her desire will be for her husband to somehow bring order into this tempestuous world of hers of childbearing, and he therefore should play the role of ruling, doing what he was called to do in that society.
And then the further consequences, it talks about him having to work the land
Sure.
in a difficult way.
Right. So the ground is disenfranchised from people. Therefore, the idea is this is not going to be an easy route. They're going to have to work hard to grow food. And again, there's a lot of anxiety connected with that. Same word. Okay, this Hebrew word itzavon occurs only 3 times in the Bible. Once with regard to the woman and her conception, once with regard to Adam and the ground, and then last time with regard to Noah in chapter 5 toward the end. So he's going to likewise have anxiety in the things that he's responsible for. And that too hooks back to the idea of provision of food, which God did for them in the garden. Now they're going to have to do it for themselves. How good are they going to be at doing that? Well, they're going to face significant challenges. So these are descriptive of consequences, not curses and punishments.
Please check out more videos from The Charge. Don't forget to click on like and hit the subscribe button.